But I wanted to give you three things and three strategies that you can use to cause what you're doing, whether it's a business, or especially for those of you that are in business and your work, to thrive and to prosper regardless of what's going on in the territory. This is what I want to show you. It's a spiritual thing as well. It's a spiritual thing. You see, you can build something, and this includes ministry, this includes anything. You can build something by the virtue of your skill, your certifications, and your connections, and your education. You can build something with those qualities and it thrive, because naturally, if something is good, if something is excellent, it's going to thrive, it's going to grow, it's going to succeed. The problem is that when things are built just on natural pillars, these natural pillars, it becomes susceptible to earthly and natural trends. So let's say the stock market, let's say the economy, and etc. And so I've had many believers who actually own businesses who are mentored. They're coming to me and they're saying, "Hey, man of God, this is what is going on." And because of the way they've built their business, and the pillars in which their business stands on, they begin to suffer the same way that an unbeliever who has a business may suffer. Please understand that what separates you as a Christian influencer, a Christian business owner, a Christian entrepreneur from someone in the world is the fact that when things begin to go wrong in the world, they may go down. The people who may have gone to Harvard, right, may have gone to Oxford, have the best degrees, have the best systems, strategies, connections, they are subject to whatever's going on in the world, but you are now able to be preserved because the foundations of what you built are not just natural, but are also spiritual. I want to show you how to involve God in what you're building for those of you that are entrepreneurs and for those of you that are businessmen, businesswomen, and business-minded. Those of you who know you're going to be getting into those fields, I need you to listen to this. So the issue is this. If you want to be a natural person, you can thrive naturally, right? You can thrive naturally. You can thrive by reason of the systems and the structures that you've set into place for your business and for whatever it is that you're doing. You can thrive. But now, the moment that you say that you're a Christian, and the moment that you say that you want God to help you, that means that you must now submit yourself to the requirements of that spirit. People who want the help of deities, the first thing that they must do is submit themselves to the requirements of that spirit, of that deity. That's why someone who's in a cult, let's say they're in a cult because they want influence and power and wealth, one of the requirements may be to bring a cow for sacrifice, to bring a goat for sacrifice, to bring this for sacrifice. When they bring that thing for sacrifice, what they're saying is, I'm willing to submit myself to the requirements of this supervising spirit so that I can get what they want. But I'm not just going to bring this sacrifice now. I'm going to bring whatever sacrifice is necessary in perpetuality, whatever that spirit requires of me, not just today. This was just the entrance fee, but not just today, but in the future, I will be able to meet the demand. That's why people who are sorcerers, they don't expect to sacrifice their children. They don't enter into it expecting to sacrifice their wives and their husbands. They don't enter into it expecting to sacrifice the destinies of their posterity. No, they enter into it because they thought that maybe they would just have to kill an animal or two and do this. But unfortunately, the spirit that supervises that altar begins to require and demand even more, require and demand even more, require and demand even more. Because any sacrifice that's given in the natural cannot perpetually sustain a spirit. This is true even for the Father. if you read the requirements of sacrifice in the book of Leviticus, you would see that there's multiple sacrifices for multiple things, because God himself was not satisfied with whatever would be sacrificed in present time. So if you were to sin tomorrow, another sacrifice must be made. And so spirits aren't perpetually satisfied by natural sacrifices, even the blood of man. That's why God himself had to come in the flesh. And what? And give himself the DNA and the blood of the Son was the only thing that when it was poured on the altar of heaven, that it was able to satiate the wrath of the Father. So spirits, if you want the help of us, if you say, I'm going into business, I'm going into entrepreneurship, and I want the help of a spirit, the first thing you must begin to ask yourself is, what are the requirements of this deity, of this entity? Unfortunately, most believers call themselves Christian businessmen and Christian businesswomen and Christian entrepreneurs, but yet there's no indication that they've sought for the requirements of of God. They don't know what God is requiring of them. They don't know what God wants from them. So they live normal lives, but just because they consider themselves Christians, they think that their business and their job is automatically drawn into their covenant with the Lord. That's not the truth. Everything you have and everything you begin must be intentionally covenanted to God, must be intentionally submitted to God, must be intentionally giving unto God. Nothing that you create is automatically the Lord's. You must make the decision and give it to him. Right? This is not the case for Satan. With Satan, once you decide to give yourself to him, everything you have is his. But with God, once you decide to give yourself to him, you must now choose to serve him with your soul. You must now choose to serve him with your heart. You must now choose to submit yourself for the renewing of your mind. You must now choose to raise your children in an intentional way. You must now choose for your business to have certain pillars in which it can stand. It is not automatic. So don't think that just because you're a Christian, what you have is automatically brought into your covenant with God. That is not the case. So the moment you become a believer, and the moment you say that you want God to be involved in this business, God to be involved in this work, the work of your hands, you must now begin to listen for the requirements of God. Because as long as you continue to call yourself a Christian, and you're not listening to God, then that means that you're in disobedience. And that means that you now become susceptible to satanic attack. And Satan is going to attack you not just because you're in the same business field as a witch, but he's going to attack you because you consider and you've mentioned and you've spoken out that you're a Christian. And so along with saying that you're Christian, let there be evidences in your life and in your consecration. Are you following me? And so when someone is a believer and their work and their business and their entrepreneurial endeavors are now committed unto the Lord, it really shows, the time that it shows is when things are bad. It was by wisdom that when the world descended into a time of famine, that Egypt was preserved because of the wisdom of one that heard the voice of God. Right? Joseph heard God's voice, was able to preserve a nation and to cause that nation to rise as a world superpower because they had what every other nation was seeking for in that time. So it's in times of hardship. Yes. It's in times of hardship that it's shown who the spiritual people are. Because natural people go along with with societal trends, but spiritual people swim against the current. Are you following me? Now, I want to give you three things. The first thing, of course, as I said, you must be consecrated unto the Lord. This is important because you need to understand that it's not everyone that you can do work with, that you can collaborate with, that you can do business with. When you are lacking in your devotion, when you're lacking in your consecration, you will not be spiritually sensitive enough to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit. I'll give you an example. If you have a successful and a thriving business, odds are that you did not really, you wanted it to thrive, but you weren't really sure how it would. But you know that God had invested in it. It was the hand of God. So it's God who causes businesses to thrive, right? So if peradventure you start a work and it begins to thrive, don't think that now you need to begin to collaborate with the world. You need to begin to compromise. You need to begin to act like the way the world is acting in order for where you've been to be sustained. The only people who switch up like that are those who are lacking in their consecration. The same God who will raise you up, who will promote you, who will cause you to become visible to the world, is the same God that will sustain you. But if you lack consecration, what's going to happen is that you're going to enter into a certain height, and you'll see that everyone in that height is collaborating with certain people. Everyone in that height is following societal trends. Everyone in that position is doing X, Y, and Z. And now you feel as if for you to be sustained in that position, you must follow suit, not knowing that in following suit, you may covenant yourself in your business and your works to something that is ungodly. And in doing so, you begin to disobey God. But if you have a base of consecration, your devotional life, your prayer life, your fasting life, seeking the face of the Lord, then what happens is that you know that you are going to be able to hear the voice of God. I'll say it again. You are going to be able to hear the voice of God in what you're doing. And so I'll give you a practical example. My father, when he was in Nigeria, he always tells a story about how he had a business. He had his own business. And at that time in his business, he was about to get into partnership with someone. I believe this person was either French or Italian. And it was a Caucasian person. And if you're in Africa at that time, and you're doing business with people that are in Europe and the US, you know that you're probably going to make a lot of money, right? And so, but his church was doing a prayer and fasting, and he said that one time when he was entering into the doorway of the church, at the threshold, he just stepped over the threshold, he heard a voice speak to him. I believe that an angel was stationed there waiting for him, right? But he heard a voice there, and that voice said, "You will not go into business with," and it named the name of that person. And so he knew that although it may seem profitable, it was not the will of God. You see, the danger of someone who's building something is that sometimes you'll feel as if you have to collaborate and connect with and deal with everyone who's doing something, not knowing that just because it seems profitable does not mean that it's profitable. What you get from that person in finances may be much less than what they take from you. And so you can do a trade. Let me tell you spiritual things. Someone can come to you and they'll give you money. And when you take the money, you don't know that when you take the money, you're actually selling something. You may not know that when you take that $100, what you've done now is that you've given away your next $100,000 in sales. Are you following me? So you've traded away much more than what you've gotten. But in the natural and in the present, it'll seem as if you've engaged in something that's profitable for you and the works of your hands. But you don't know what you've actually done is that you've given away something much more spiritually than what you've gained in the natural. And so you must be discerning. So when you're discerning, the Spirit of God will be able to help you in these areas. And it may seem profitable. It may be the way that everybody else is going, but you know that you can do something that no one else is doing and that no one else prospers from, but God will tell you to do it that way, and you will blow up, and people will be like, but no one does it this way. Because it's not really about the system, it's about the spirit that has sat upon the person who's working the system. Are you following me? So these are ways that this is the first way that you can now begin to bring God into the work of your hands and bring God into your business and into your endeavors. That's the first way. Your personal life of consecration so that you can actively hear the voice of God. And don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid. Don't just follow every trend. And don't compromise. The second way, as I talked about it before, is specific spiritual labors for that business endeavor. So let's say a good example, one of the people who I was praying for, they have a warehouse somewhere. And I was telling her, I said, hey, you have a warehouse. How many times do you go there physically and pray and fast there? Praying, fasting, praying, fasting, praying, fasting. First 2 days of every month. So you have a system. I'm running through it because we're out of time. But you have a system through which, these are spiritual systems encoded into you can even encode it into like the bylaws of the company to help sustain the company spiritually. Encoded into the structure of the business. So you go there once a week, you and some people, and pray and fast there. The first 3 days of every month, you're praying, you're fasting about that thing. That God's will would be done. That God would expose what needs to be exposed. What you're saying is, God, I may be able to succeed with just my mind, but I don't want to depend on my mind. I need the help of a spirit. You see, in those days, if you read the Bible in the Old Testament, you will see that many of them would go to war with the help of a spirit. They needed to consult their deities. When the Philistines were sending the Ark of the Covenant back, they consulted the deities. And they said, what are we supposed to do? This thing is killing our people. And the deities gave them specific instructions. So in whatever you do, whether it's business, you need to consult God so that you can receive the necessary wisdom, because what you know is not enough. And so you have a system in place where you're praying, you're fasting. You're praying, you're fasting. If you have a physical location, you're praying, you're fasting over it. If it's something that you're building from home, you're praying over your documents. You're praying over what you're doing. I have a friend, I have someone who I mentor. He's a photographer, and I was telling him, you can edit pictures and you can write a whole prayer in the picture and no one would know. You'll type out a prophecy, you'll put it in the picture, and you edit it in a way where no one will see the words. But I'm telling you, and you pray, you say, God, when this photo goes back to these people, let things begin to happen in their life. That's you involving God in what you're doing. You follow me? So you need a system in place, prayer and fasting. Find times to do that. The third thing that you need to do in order to involve God in the works of your hand and in your business has to do with giving. This is all necessary because, as I said, you want to be able to withstand the tides and the times. Last one is having to do with giving. Now, if you have a company, if you have a business, you want to structure your accounts in a way that what you're doing is benefiting others. I'll give you 3 areas. The first area is your alms. The homeless, the orphans, and the widows. Or let me say the needy, the poor, the orphans, and the widows. Whether that means if your company is big enough for you to start a little, let's say, a charity or a fund just for that, go ahead and do it. So you create, so out of all the funds you get, you're going to split it, not splitting all the funds, but you're going to have one area where you say, okay, every month, this is what is going, a part of our finances is going, and whether that means you have to partner with a charity that you know is reputable, whether that means you have to do your own research and find these houses and these organizations, and you're partnering with them as a business, not personally. So it's not from your personal account. It's from the business. And the reason you're doing it from the business is because you're saying, God, this work is not just benefiting my pockets or those who I employ, but it's benefiting those who may never even come in contact with me. So a portion of that is going to go to the needy, the orphans, and the widows. And then another portion of that, you can, as you're led to, you stagger it, or you do it other once, or, and the thing about this, it doesn't have to be a crazy amount, right? If you're led to and you can, so be it. But a portion. Then another portion of that is going to go to mission work, right? So you're finding, let's say, missionaries, or you're partnering with the church in certain strange, I don't want to say strange nations, but some nations that you know that the church may be suppressed. Let's say India and Pakistan and Afghanistan. You're finding some, and you're partnering with some, let's say some ministries that actually send out missionaries. So that's the second quadrant, or the second third. The first is the needy, the homeless, the needy, the widows, and the orphans. The second is for missionary work. You see, yes, this is you establishing a covenant with God, actually. It's a covenant. Oh my God. There are some things that you don't pray your way out of, you give your way out of it. That's the truth. That's the truth. Now, that's the second third. So the first is, as I said, the widows, the needy, and orphans. The second is missionary works or missions. Nations that you know that $1 can really be stretched in that nation. So you may have like a monthly rotation where you have something sent automatically. The third is to the house of God. The house of God. Yes, as Fabiola said, verifiable missionary work, not these charities that, they'll pay the employees with 95%. No, verifiable missionary work. So, and the third is what? The third is the house of God. So this may look like your home church, if you have one. This could look like ministries that have been a blessing to you, that you're led to sow into and give into. If you incorporate this into the system, if you incorporate these things into the system of the business, I'm telling you, you're going to be surprised. If you do this for 3 months, you will be surprised what begins to happen. Yeah. The consecration, or the personal consecrations, then the spiritual labors, and then the given component. If you're able to do that for 3 months, for half a year, you will be surprised that in times of instability, God will keep you. God will preserve that work of your hands. He'll show you things before it happens. He'll tell you to get out of certain investments before it crashes. You'll be shocked. You'll be shocked. Yeah. As Cedric says, part of the missions may be contributions to small and rural radio stations to maintain the spread of the gospel. So if you use things, so if you're driving, like in my area, we have one called Star 99.1. So if you actually listen to these things, you can actually go and set up a recurring donation. It doesn't have to be much. Some of these donations is a cup of coffee. How much coffee you spend in a week? With this economy, 1 cup may be a lot of money. You can say, I'm not going to give that, I'm not going to pay for that this month or this day, but instead I'm going to sow that money. So if you're able to do these things, you are saying, God, this business is yours. This entrepreneurial activity is yours. Yes, I'll make this a separate video. This entrepreneurial activity, it belongs to you. And then you'll begin to see the hand of God upon it. I tell you the truth. All the years of praying and fasting, and you'll be surprised. You see, what people want most times is that they want a prophecy. They want a prophecy. They want someone to come to them and prophesy to them. And when they get a prophecy, something big happens and they get a large lump sum of money. That happens every now and then, but it's not something that is sustainable. Or let me not say that. It's not something that will cause you to perpetually increase. If you're looking for perpetual and consistent increase, what you need is a system embedded within the work of your hands that is going to cause you to continue to attract the favor of God. But that is done through structure. You structure it into the business. Yeah. Into what? You structure it into the business. It's a covenant between you and God. You're structuring these things into the business. It'll be shite. And you can start small. If you're a small business, you start small. And then as you grow and as you enlarge, you increase it. She says, also the Christian business should have Christian principles. That's a given. I mean, you shouldn't say, hey, I want God to prosper my strip club. Obviously, that doesn't apply here. I'm a tattoo artist and I want God to bless my business. No. I have a bar and I want God to bless my bar. You're not serious with yourself. The business must have Christian principles in a sense where you're not losing your values. It's not against your consecration. That if someone sees what you do, they're not going to wonder if it's completely ungodly or not.